Lies of P on Steam Deck thanks to NEOWIZ for providing a code of the game. So this game, surprisingly enough, is not verified despite running particularly great for what I heard. So the main issue not making this verified seems to be some in-game text is small and maybe difficult to read. We'll see about that. Alright, the options menu. When it comes to text size, some of it is very small. I agree with Valve on that one, but you can increase the size of the subtitles, at least that's something. Then when it comes to graphics, I kept it on native resolution, VSync off obviously, we have SteamOS for that. There's FSR2, we're going to talk more about that later, let's disable it for now. CAO, this is for ambient occlusion, we're going to ignore it. Basically medium settings with anti-aliasing on high because it's TAA, barely a difference when it comes to performance. And really anything below high on UE4 games and UE5 games usually means more pixelation to the edges. The anti-aliasing is not great in general, but on high I think it makes a difference visually speaking. Post-processing, shadows on medium, you can drop shadows further if you want to. Textures on high, doesn't use a lot of VRAM. And that's basically it. And the anisotropic filtering, I cracked that up. Alright, so welcome to Lies of P. We're at, again, native resolution, medium settings with some stuff on high. Look at that shadow quality. And as you may have suspected, this is Unreal Engine 4, not Unreal Engine 5. And this just goes to show how art style really does matter when it comes to video games. But there's one issue I need to mention about the performance. When you're GPU limited, this means when the GPU is completely maxed out, which can happen quite often. The frame time is very inconsistent when that happens in some places. If you look at the frame time, it has some small spikes like that. That's the inconsistency I'm talking about. So my advice for this is to actually lock the frame rate to something lower. But this is not the most demanding part of the game. One of the most demanding parts is actually in one of the hub areas, so let's get there. Okay, so here's the area where I dropped the most. I've been playing with save files on other maps to check that out. And by far where it dropped the most is in this hotel, this lobby. When looking at quote-unquote this bonfire, as you can see it drops pretty damn hard. But this is the worst I've seen so far, this part. Outside of this, the game has been completely fine. So yeah, I'll just ignore this part. Yeah, it sucks that you gotta stand here and have inconsistent frame rates. But I think it's a very minor thing considering the size of the game and all it has to offer. This is just this location, you'll be here pretty often. But yeah, I think it's just a minor thing. I'm not fighting anybody in this section. If that bothers you in any way, what you can do is actually enable FSR2 on quality to soften the blow, to say it in some way. Maybe lock it to 40 and yeah, you'll be at locked 40s across the board. This cap, I capped it to 45, so half 90 Hz. And I forgot to mention HDR, enable it if you have a Steam Deck OLED. If you don't have one, just keep it disabled. I'm going back to the part where I drop frames the most. Here, as I step in, blah, it kind of dies. Again, if you want this to not be a problem, enable FSR2 quality. I think that does the job pretty well. But the game looks a bit softer. Since I'm targeting 45, while I love how it looks at native, despite the chunkiness of the pixels with the TAA solution, I think to get 45 basically across the board without stutters due to the GPU being maxed out, which again happens in this game, but it's not the norm in every UE4 game. Quality upscaling, you can play with the sharpness over here. I'll leave it at 0.6. You have a good amount of GPU power to spare. Yeah, it's softer, but you can make sure that at least outside of the hotel, you'll have a consistent 45 FPS across the board without the frame time spikes. So if you don't care about this, just put it at native without upscaling. On the smaller screen, it's all up to personal taste. Personally, I think keeping 45 is fine. But if you have a Steam Deck LCD, maybe you want to do 40s, or maybe you want to keep native with shadows on medium. You cannot go wrong with either 40 or 45. The game feels pretty smooth, all things considered. And after playing many UE5 games on Steam Deck recently, it makes me appreciate Unreal Engine 4 quite a bit more, especially when they have a shader compilation pass when the game starts. I mean, I haven't seen shader compilation stutter, but when the game is loading something, as an example, I don't know, we teleport from one checkpoint to the other, we teleport maybe from one checkpoint to the other, or we have a loading screen. At the very beginning we get a big stutter, but again, it's not while fighting or anything like that, so it's not even traversal stutter, I would say. It's maybe the game just loading something. Then I forgot this game existed because there were so many games coming out, but here it is. And it's fantastic on Steam Deck. The only gripe I have with it, again, apart from the edges of the game not being fantastic with the TAA solution, is the fact that the text is very small. I mean, it's not unreadable, but it's bothersome. You can notice it while playing the game, especially in handheld, obviously. But at least you can increase the size of the subtitles. The thing is, the damage numbers, the name of the weapon that you're using, all that, and the inventory, the text is very small. I mean, it works, you can read it, but it's a little bit hard to read. I wish we had an update for bigger UI, but UI being bigger can be a very difficult thing to pull off, especially when the game is already done, to say it in some way. It's very hard to adjust for a smaller screen, the UI, I mean. Because you increase the size of the text and other things can break. So I've been doing UI for some time, and trust me when I say that, when you have to adjust for a smaller screen, it's an absolute pain in the ass. Especially when you already have your UI completely done. Adjusting that requires a lot of thinking. I would redo the UI in that case for smaller screens and move things around. Because it was clearly meant for, not for handheld play, for a bigger screen, I would say, a bigger resolution, to say it in some way. Alright, so I teleported to a swamp location, a classic in Souls-likes. There always has to be at least one of these. And I'm doing this on purpose because there's a little bit of foliage, and foliage tends to drop performance. It's very hard to render for a GPU in comparison to no foliage at all. And also I'm using something that throws fire, so we have effects on screen. And so far it seems that the hotel hub area is still what runs the worst, at least for what I tried so far. This is way more ahead into the game, by the way. And I'm using a save I borrowed. So yeah, I haven't personally gotten to this area of the game, I'm just at the beginning, but yeah, I wanted to show you something else, because I think, again, just the showing the beginning of the game sometimes is not a good reference. In this case it is, but that's a rarity. Perfection, I got him. But one thing that I'm noticing, apart from my reflection, is that when I'm using fire, it's very, very bright with HDR. So GG for HDR in this game, at least for now. Okay, now in Moonlight Town, which is somewhere else from the other map, that looks very similar but seems to have more foliage. Again, I still think the hotel runs way worse than this, which I would say is a good thing, just because usually these areas run worse than the rest of the game. And well, I have more enemies on screen. In the hotel, there's no enemies, as far as I know. So yeah, again, I highly recommend it on Steam Deck. This is fantastic. I think it's a very accessible Souls game in comparison to other games, by far. I played it on stream and I beat the first boss like in 2 attempts, I think. So if you still had doubts on performance on this one, many of you guys asked me to do it for more than a year, I think. Well, I think it's a good idea to play this one. It's fantastic. I still think that if you're tired of Souls-likes, you're probably not going to enjoy it because that's what this is. But again, I think it's easier than most of them. I think they did a good job balancing it, at least when it comes to the beginning parts of the game. It's still pretty tough, don't get me wrong, but not tough to a point that you need to be good at Souls-like games. To myself, I'm enjoying the game quite a bit. I played it on stream yesterday, as I was saying, and I'm an hour and a half doing a stream. There was a drop there. And I was 2.5 hours. Usually when a stream goes to 2.5 hours means that I'm enjoying the game. So yeah, this game actually surprised me. I missed it when it came out. I played the demo a little bit. And yeah, I definitely was missing out. But there were, there were way too many games when this came out. And now I think it's a good time to jump in. Had lots of updates. There's a DLC coming that you need to prepare for, because in Souls-likes, that's usually what you need to do. When a DLC comes, it's usually a map outside of the main area. Switching to place a Souls-like on Steam Deck that is more accessible, I'll highly recommend this one, at least right now. I think it's in a fantastic state. Just lock it to 45 or 40 if you want more stability. Visually, I think it kicks it out of the park, at least when it comes to art. It's a UE4 game, performs pretty well except in the hotel, which again, hub area, not a big deal. So yeah, thanks again to NEOWIZ for providing a code of the game, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys, thanks for watching.